definition of multi-site, I just wrote just a couple of things. It's doing church in more than one location, obviously. All right, we kind of know that. Just a little historical progression. In my lifetime, in kind of an American deal, I don't know how it translates globally, but over the last couple hundred years, church was one service in one location at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, right? First Baptist Church, First Presbyterian Church, First Methodist. You might have Sunday school before that, but you had one service in one location, and it was probably at 11 o'clock. And then ultimately, as churches began to grow, they went to two services. There was pushback on that. There still are some that will give pushback on it. How do you know it? Well, honestly, you don't know everybody anyway. Unless you're a church of 50 people or less, you don't know everybody. But that was a big pushback. Figured it out, went to multiple services, and then came the multi-site movement, which said, oh, hey, we can not only do multiple services, but we can do multiple locations. All right, and multiple locations can refer to on-site locations. I just told you about Larry Osborne, who had on-site locations like this right here. This auditorium might very well be an on-site location. It could be another expression of what's going on in the big building if you have enough parking, which we'll talk about that in just a minute. Or it can be a different kind of expression, but that would be an on-site location or somewhere on the site here. And then you've got off-site locations, which can be anywhere from next door to, another continent. But that's kind of how we define multi-site. Now, types of multi-site. There are several, and I listed just some of them here. You've got video multi-site. Any of you guys have video multi-site going on right now? That's our model at Seacoast. We are video multi-site. What we have is we have a teaching team. So I think I explained that just a little bit. I won't get deep into the weeds, but we have 6 people on the teaching team. So you might teach once a month or once every other month, not the same teacher, but that one teaching team, whoever's teaching, is broadcast kind of live to 14 locations. And when I say kind of live, it works like this. I don't know all the technical stuff on it, but it's kind of like, I can't remember the word. Now we have streaming. Before we had, wasn't VCRs, but what was between VCR and streaming? Yeah, where you could watch something as it was recorded, just in just a little TiVo. That's it right there. But what we do is we start at our broadcast campus, all of our services start 2 minutes early. So if the service is at 10 o'clock, it starts at 9:58. Most people don't know that because all they know is the 5-minute countdown clock. And we start that whenever we want to start it. But we start 2 minutes early, and at our campuses, they start 2 minutes late. So it's a 4-minute lag. Follow that? But some of our campuses don't have the exact same service times. I don't know how many services we have. A lot of them are the same, but some of them aren't. And so it's more of a TiVo type experience. So it's almost live. You follow that? Almost live. And there's technology for that. And we've watched it go all the way from satellite, which costs a lot, to where it doesn't cost a lot, cost much at all. We do ours live. There is video delayed. Okay. Let me just tell you a quick story. We grew from 2,000 people in weekly attendance to 10,000 people in weekly attendance over I think 8-year period, something like that. And we had 1 week delay video everywhere except for where it was live. Follow what I'm saying? Had campuses as close as 10 minutes, all right? So we grew on a 1 week delay And that'd be interesting to tell stories on that. I won't do it. I don't have time. The only reason we went live is because of the neurosis of the senior pastor at the time. That was me. Um, because I wanted to be live. I wanted to be able to say good morning to everybody and maybe refer to something that was happening that day. Did that help us grow? No, not really. It actually slowed down a little bit, and that wasn't the fault. But it was some other things that were going on. But the point is it didn't have to be live. And we did it week delay, and we grew from 2,000 to 10,000 people. And so some people still do that. Um, uh, Another type of multi-site is live teaching. And I broke that down into at least 3 different things. Some places have same sermon, live teaching. That's Dave Ferguson and the team at Community Christian in Chicago. They call it the Big Idea, and they get together once a week and they plan the message together and they write out a message, and they have several locations, and they have a live speaker at each place that preaches the same message but uses their own illustrations. And that's multi-site, okay? There are other places that have live teaching, same subject, but not same message. So we've got a series. Here's the subject. You figure out what you're going to preach, okay? And then some places, and this is a little bit more difficult to define what it is that makes us one when you get this far, is live teaching different subject. We're all the same church. We're a multi-site church, but we have live teaching different subject. And we could go further. I mean, I could give you all kinds of them. There are some that will have, like if us 4 right here are the teaching team, I teach at one campus, you teach at another one, you teach at another one, you teach at another one, and we each do a different series and we rotate around. There are lots of ways to frame that, but those are some of the models of multi-site that I've seen. Experiences. With multi-site, when I say experiences, that's everything that happens when you come onto the campus and you go into auditorium. And some are identical. And there are various levels of identical. I'll explain it like Starbucks. The difference between a franchise Starbucks. If you go into a franchise Starbucks, it's the same decor, it's the same everything. You're going to get the same orders and the same stuff in the food cabinet, right? I mean, even the cups are the same, except for they're labeled differently depending on where you're at. There's a difference between Starbucks franchise and we serve Starbucks coffee here, right? You've been to those, maybe a hotel or whatever, and it's not exactly the same, but the coffee's the same. Well, I've seen that. We've been at all stages of that. We started out Life Church. I'll just say Life Church, Craig Rochelle. Theirs has always been Starbucks company store. So it is the same. The buildings look the same. Everything looks the same. When you go into one Life Church, you've been to all Life Churches. All right. We started out more at the far end of, we proudly serve Starbucks here. In other words, you're going to get the message from Starbucks Central, but it could be all kinds of things that are different. We have moved more toward a company, although it's not entirely there. And I'll show you in just a minute what it looks like. But you've got everything in between, but they're identical to where experiences are unique. And that would be more like Larry Osborne, like I explained. They had multiple, they still do multiple different music styles, worship styles, but they're all the same multi-site church. You follow that, you may go here to get this and here to get traditions, which, you could have a choir and a piano, but you get the same teaching, right? Make sense? Everybody with me still? All right. I just wanted to give you a little bit background. Let's talk just a minute then, as we're talking about how about church planting? Are multi-site locations actually church plants? Here's an argument that I hear a lot. I've heard it since I've been up here. Yeah, we're not into multi-site. We plant churches, or we do multi-site. We don't really do church planting, right? Well, here's what I would say about that: is that I think you need to redefine what a church plant is, because whether it is a multi-site campus or it is a sovereign church, I just call it a sovereign church, does its own thing, they're both church plants. All right. For instance, if whatever city that you're in, think about this. Let's say you're in a city and you are your church and you are a non-denominational church, or you're a Baptist church, or you're an AG church. And let's say the Assemblies of God decide to plant a church in your town. Is that a church plant? Sure it is. It's an AG church plant. Well, when it comes to multi-site, you've almost got to think of multi-site churches as mini denominations. We die to hear that said, but that's a way to see it. So if a mini denomination plants a church or a campus in a town, that's a church plant. Okay, it's a church plant. They're all church plants, and that's coming from a church planting guru. All right, Art plants more churches than anybody else in America right now, and I believe that I shouldn't say that. Southern Baptists plant more; they're bigger, but I believe that they're all church plants. Make sense? Make sense? Here's another question that people ask: is what's the difference between a campus pastor and a sovereign church planter? And how do we know the difference, and how do we handle that? Let me just say at Seacoast, we have 14 campuses with 14 campus pastors. The global church, the global digital church, in fact, we changed who we are, how we identify ourselves during COVID from we're one church, many campuses. That's what we've been for a long time. Seacoast Church now, let's see if I can say it right, is we are a global church. We are a global digital church that meets both online and in multiple locations. So we have elevated the global experience, and we got a campus pastor, we have a whole team, we have small groups, got all of that happens in the global digital realm. That's why it's a campus, right? So 14 of those, plus we have planted 8 from our staff in sovereign churches. Is there a difference between a campus pastor and what you're looking for in a campus pastor and a church planter in a sovereign situation? And I would say yes. A lot of things are the same. A campus pastor, you want a leader who's able to lead from the second chair, lead well from the second chair. And we could talk a lot about that. I don't want to take time with that. A lot of the qualities are the same. You want an entrepreneurial leader in both of those. But, and this is my bias here, a church planter, well, let's just back up. A campus pastor must be a good communicator. If you're going to be a leader, you need to communicate well. You need to learn how to communicate and communicate well. Leadership at any level. A church planter, I think, needs to be a gifted communicator, especially in our model, the model that we have. Campus pastor doesn't have to be a gifted communicator because they are receiving a video that is a team of gifted communicators who draw people to the message. All right. In our model, in going to be a church planter, you can start within our model. In fact, I don't think there's a better place to start than to be a campus pastor and learn how to do all the stuff that you've got to do to start a campus. That's a great way to learn how to plant a church, a sovereign church, because they're all churches. But if you're going to plant a church, you need to be a gifted communicator. Everybody thinks they're gifted communicators. I'm just telling you that. Everybody does. How do you know if you're a gifted communicator? Does anybody have the gift to listen to you? Okay, so that's kind of how it is. All right, I'm being blunt. Some people say they're a leader, and if you're a leader and nobody's following, you're just out taking a walk, right? And so we need to be self-aware and say, where does my gift fit best? Does that make sense? Because one's not better than the other. They're all a part of the body of Christ, all right? So we can talk about that in a minute. And you can fire me question, and I don't have a problem with that. I always tell our church at Seacoast, you don't have to agree with me on everything because you have a right to be wrong. Okay? So let's go to the next one. Why multi-site? Why multi-site? All right. Two things that I see. One is to solve a problem, and the second is to reach a new demographic. All right. Solve a problem, and we're dealing with that right now at Seacoast. One of their leaders came to me, and I'm going to consult with the Seacoast executive team this next Tuesday in an offsite all day to address this. So what they've got is what we've got is we've got two services. We've got 3 services on Sunday morning, 2 in the primetime hours, which are 9:30. One of them is, and the other one is at 11. So those are 2 prime timers. And then we've got 1 service at 8 o'clock. And the 2 services are absolutely jam-packed full, parking lots full, over full, it's a mess. And then the other service is about 50% full in a 2,500 seat auditorium. And so they're looking at, we've got to add a 4th service, all right? And so I sat down with Lisa, who came to talk to me about that. And another thing that's going on at Seacoast is the young adult ministry is bubbling up and growing. And they kind of like a little different style. They have a Monday night service, but it's really exploding. She said, we need to add a 4th service, but what we need to do is we need to take it off-site maybe and make it in the young adult style, and we think that will really go. And what I said to her was, take a look at what we're wanting to do here because you have not solved a problem, right? Because the problem is what? Too many people in the services, and they like, by the way, they like what they're coming to. So we don't need to add something that they are not asking for, answering questions they're not asking for. So should we not do a young adult service as an alternative? Not necessarily. We may want to do both, but understand doing this is not going to solve that. Does that make sense? That's what I wanted to say. And so you need to look at that. And solve a problem and reach a new demographic. All right, so next question that I've got is when to consider multi-site. When should I think about doing this? And I think I mentioned in one of our sessions that I don't believe in the 80% rule. I used to, but I've seen it work different. If your service times are the right service times, the right size, the right length, and in the right time, and if your auxiliary ministries, which is children's, basically, and whatever else you have adequate space, and if your parking has adequate space. And a lot of people ignore the parking lot and just look at the seats inside. And if your parking lot is not the right size, it doesn't matter how many seats inside, you're never going to fill them because people don't have a place to park, right? And some of you may be in urban situations where you have to handle that in a little bit different. I'm not going to get into that, but I just want to say I understand that, and there are ways around that. So this is what was interesting. I'll just take a little spiderweb story here. So I was at the retreat a few months ago, and one of the guys at the retreat sat down with me, and he said, I want to talk nuts and bolts with you. And I said, okay. And he said, we can't get through the 3,000 barrier. We hit 2,500, 2,800, we'll go 32, comes back. We just can't get through the 3,000 barrier. And I want to know how. And I said, well, let's talk. There are some issues. Let's talk about some basic fundamentals that aren't very spiritual. But let's talk about basic fundamentals. And ultimately, I got down to the parking lot. And I said, well, how's your parking? I don't know. Well, they have a parking problem. And I said, is there any land around you? He said, yeah, there's a piece of land right next door, but it's way too expensive. And I said, really? How much does it cost? And he said, well, I think it's $1 million. And I said, and that's too expensive. And he said, yes. And I said, based on what? How do you know it's too expensive? Well, $1 million is a lot of money. Well, it might be or it might not be. Let's talk about that in a minute. How many parking places could you get out of that? And he said 300. And I said, okay. Um, and you're doing 3 services. He said, yeah. And so that would be, how many people come per car? Well, I'm not sure. And I said, well, I'll tell you, 3. Okay. It's about 2.7 to 3 in your area. How much money do each one of those people in that car give? He said, I'm not sure. I said, I know. It's probably about $1,500 per person per year. And now it was more than that in their situation. But let's go 1,500 times 3, what? 4,500 times 3 services is what? Or it all works out to about $1.3 million, assuming that you could fill all of those parking places, and it would allow you to grow. So is $1 million too expensive? No. He could pay off $1 million in 1 year. He got up from that conversation, called his business manager, and they bought the land that day. Okay. I'm not saying to do that, but all I'm saying is you can think. So, some of you are going, we need to be a lot more spiritual than this, and we probably should be. But the reality is these are the times that we live in. In fact, um, as I was preparing this, I thought, because people have pushed back at me before on talking about this kind of deeper into it, is why do you need all of this organization? Why do you even need to think about those things? And you might be right. You might not need to. But if the church in the book of Acts would not have thought about some of these things, it would have stopped at Acts chapter 6 when it started to grow, got too big. They couldn't take care of everybody. And they would have just said, well, let's just worship the Lord some more. But they didn't. They said, let's figure out a plan, put some people in charge, get specific about it so that we can continue to do what we're doing. And so that's what I would say in thinking about some of these things. Parking in an auxiliary space. 100%, you can go 90 to 100% as far as the size of your services. Then you've got to define the when. Why do you want to add another service? If you have 2 services that are full and you can go 100%, my theory, and I've studied this in a lot of situations, is that your 3rd service is going to bump up against 50% if it goes, because this is in America where we live, because it's an off prime service time. Does that make sense? And whether it's early, whether it's afternoon, whether it's Saturday night, whenever it is, you're going to get to about 50%. So define the when. If I add a 4th service or a 3rd service, and let's say I have an auditorium that will seat 500 people, let's make it 1,000 because that's easier to get the numbers on. So 2 services, I can have about 2,000 people in there. A 3rd service, according to what I just told you, how many people could you have? 500. Okay. So if I add a 3rd service, there's 500, plus there's staff issues and all of those types of things that you have to figure in there. So if I'm going to make a decision to go multi-site, then I've got to say, what is the win? And is it a bigger possible win to do an extra service, or is it a bigger possible win to put a couple of more services somewhere else in prime time? You just have to figure it out. It's just a kind of an exercise that you have to do. And I put 2.5 seat turns in there. I'm not going to talk about that. Now, 3 questions that you need to answer if you're thinking about multi-site. These are very, very important. Away from philosophy now into some practice. 3 questions. Thinking about doing a multi-site somewhere. Here's the first one. And I thought, and they're in an order, and when I first began to prepare this a few years ago, I thought the leadership question, which is 2, would be number 1, but it's not. The location question trumps the leader line in a minute. Okay, so the location question is this: why would I go there? What you need to do is you need to put yourself in the middle of your auditorium and think like people that come to your church. and have them ask the question you answer the question, why would I go there? If I do a multi-site, why would I go there? Now, let me just tell you, there are multiple answers that are right to that question. You just need to think it through, or you could end up spending all kinds of money and doing the wrong thing. I had a guy in Texas call me he said, I've got to have some, you got to help me. I got a problem. I said, what's that? And he said, we decided to do a multi-site. We did it about 10 minutes away, and we put X number of dollars into it, and my son-in-law is the campus pastor, and it's not working, and I'm going to have to fire my son-in-law. And it's going to be a terrible thing in my family. I said, well, let's back up a little bit. And I went through some of these principles, and basically we came to the conclusion that the Apostle Paul probably could not have made that work because they didn't have the right answers to some of the questions. And he felt great in that he didn't have to fire his son-in-law, felt terrible that they had spent all that money on a bad location. Okay, so you give me some feedback, audience feedback. Why, if you're going to start a multi-site, so you are somebody that's in your church, why would they go there? What is an answer to that question? That's the number one answer. It's more convenient for me. It's more convenient for me. I'm going to do some drawing here. This could get dangerous, all right? So here's what I think, and you got to interpret this for your own area, all right? Your own area, but I'm going to give it to you from what I've learned and where we live. If this is our campus, right here, our original campus, if you were to draw a circle around that original campus, and let's say that circle is 20 minutes, and then you were to draw a second circle around that campus, and that's 35 minutes. Here's what I can tell you. If you do a heat map, do you know what a heat map is? It's where you figure out where everybody lives that comes to your church and contributes. Here's what I can tell you about the people that live in this 15-minute segment right here, is that they like our church because they're driving into it, but they're not involved in the life of the church. Their kids aren't involved in kids stuff and all that kind of thing. If we do a multi-site in this area, anywhere in here, we can almost guarantee that it's going to be, all things being equal, that it's going to have a good chance of being a viable situation because it answers the question. It's more convenient for me. All right, that makes sense? What's another right answer? Let me give you a clue. So my friend who called and have to fire his son-in-law, they were going to put a campus right here. What was wrong with that? They were going to make it just like Hometown here, but Hometown's like Disney World. They've got a cafe. They've got all kind of kids stuff. They've got all this. It's wonderful. It's a great place to be. Nobody wants to leave, right? So it didn't answer that it's more convenient question, right? So how could we do one right here? What would be the answer? It's a different demographic. It's a different flow. Something is different. It's a different experience. It's got to be something different. We have a campus that's about 12 minutes away from our original campus, and it's a Dream Center campus, and it's a whole different demographic. With this campus is 95% white. It's 4% black and 1% Hispanic, Asian, whatever else. There is a river that you got to go over a big bridge to get to this one, which separates the city demographically. And in this demographic, it's about 40% white, which is a combination of older white people, some poorer white people, and some young white folks that have moved into the neighborhood that want to live there for a lot of reasons. And then 40% is African American and 20% is mostly Hispanic. So it's a whole different demographic, and that's one of the reasons that it works. It has about 750 people. There are some people that will drive past this one and over the bridge to get to there because they want their kids to have a multicultural experience. That makes sense? You just have to think through these things and ask yourself, why would I go there? Questions. All right? Everybody get that? All right, let's go to the next question. Is the leadership question. And the leadership question is, would you follow him or her? Be very careful about who you pick as a leader. Now, I will say that because of the first question, you can have a great leader in the wrong location, and it's all about location, 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 and it won't work. But if you have a great location and you don't have a capable leader, then you're going to have problems. And it may very well not work. And we could go through what does a capable leader look like. I'm not going to do that, but that's a question that you need to ask. Would you personally follow him or her at that leadership level? And then the third one is a fun question. It's the logistics question, which asks, is this necessary or just helpful? When you're creating a campus, is this necessary or just helpful? Let me tell you what that means. There are some things in life that are necessary and some things that are helpful. Would you agree with that? What's necessary in life? What's that? Food, clothing, shelter, air. Those are necessary. What are helpful? iPhones, Starbucks. Those are helpful things, right? Now, here's the problem. When you take something that's necessary and you put it in the helpful category, what happens? You die. Okay? When you take something that is helpful and you put it in the necessary category, what happens? You get your priorities off and you might break your budget. Right? So in church planting, in planting campuses, you need to identify what is necessary and what is helpful. I was sitting at breakfast this morning with somebody right here, and we were in just this little coffee house, and we were talking about how would you start a campus in that coffee house. We weren't talking about doing it in that coffee, but it was just a conversation. And we said, well, you right size everything. You don't have to, I don't think you would have a full band like we had last night in that coffee house. That'd be a little overkill. Would you agree with that? You wouldn't need like this big screen. You could probably do a 65-inch TV, right? You'd right. That's not necessary. It's not even helpful, but you've got to have the necessary things. How do you know what the necessary things are? I've got what I call iPods. That'll tell you how old this is. Anybody ever have an iPod? We still use these, and this. It's just an acrostic, and it stands for this. It's a great exercise to do in every area of your ministry. If you're going to start a new campus, start a new church, what is initial? This is how you tell what your DNA is. What is initial? What do we have? What are we going to do initially? And we all do this. We all do this. At Seacoast, we've got them for every area. But just to give you a broad one, our liturgy or worship style is a little different than what you're going to find at most churches. It goes like this, and there are reasons, and I'm not going to go through all of them. We've thought through them, and we feel like Holy Spirit's led us on them. But we have we start every service 2 minutes early. The preacher is preaching within 10 to 12 minutes of the front end of the service. There are 2 worship songs on the front end. Then there is there is a response time at the end. We put most of our worship on the back end. We have communion every week. We have crosses that people go to. We have candles that they light for intercessory prayer. We have worship together. And that's about a 12 to 15-minute segment at the end of our service. And then at the very end of our service, we give 2 to 3 announcements. We have a blessing and we go home. We all do that from day one. We all do that because that's who we are. Does that make sense? And we have that in all of our areas. What are our ratios for children? You know, all of the stuff. There are certain things that and we write them down, and it becomes a living list that we add to and subtract from. That's our DNA. Okay. Initial. P is preferred, which says don't have to have it when you first start, but within the first year. Let's get up to speed on this because this is what we do. Okay. The third thing is optional. You can do it. We have a First Wednesday service that's optional. Some of our campuses do First Wednesday, others other things. That's where we're not quite a company store, little closer to we serve Starbucks here. Does that make sense? But we have optional, and we have a whole list of things that we do that way. And then D is don't even think about it. We know that Chris Hodges does that. We don't do it. We know that Andy Stanley does that. We don't do it. That's not who we are. Follow that? And so if you come up with your iPods, then you can kind of get an idea of what is necessary and what is helpful. All right? Everybody got that? All right. This will be fun. Show you a decision matrix. This has been helpful for me, and I hope I can explain it in just a little bit of time. How do you make decisions on what to do as far as multi-site, where, when, all of those types of things? Just real quick. So, yeah, I wish we could click on that so that it would go bigger, but I don't think you can. It's getting squished, but that's all right. That's all right. You got it on your phone. So you've got 4 quadrants. And basically, what you've got is you've got high impact. High goes this way. Low goes easy, which is low effort. I'm going to put easy here, just that's what I've always done. And this is hard. And what we do, we take a problem. I'm doing this with the Seacoast team this week. We take a problem, and our problem is we need more space. We've outgrown our space. All right. So what are the possible ways that we can solve our problem? And we list them all out. Let's list some. We could, one, start another service. We can go multi. We can ask some people to stay home. In other words, you can only go to church 3 times out of the month. We could build a bigger building. In a fun exercise, if we had time, I'd have you guys feed these back to me, and we'd have at least 10, because sometimes in the last 5, you get one that's real creative. Okay? Get a whole list of people, get them involved. Then the next thing we got to do is put them on the decision matrix. All right? Let's do that together. Start another service. Is that going to be a big win or a small win? Could be a big win. Is it going to be easy or hard? Start another service is hard? Yeah, it might be. It could be. And so you put it in the big win. Let's put it about the middle. All right. So number 1, we put there. Go multi-site. Big win, small win. Could be a big win. Easy, hard. It's a little harder than that. Yeah. So we'll go that over. It's a high win. Could be a real high win, but it's kind of hard. Ask people to stay home. Big win, small win. Small. Easy, hard. Okay, that's over here. Build a bigger building. Hard, big win, small win. Could be a big win. I'm going to put it over here. So how you do this? Everything in this box you don't even think about, okay? Because those are small wins and they're real hard. And you'd be surprised how many times we make decisions that fit in this box and we go ahead and try it and we go, oh man, that wasn't it. Anybody got a testimony on that? We do everything in this box that we can. If it's easy and it's a big win, we're going to pick it off. We're going to figure out how to do it. And these things we decide as projects, major project, something we're going to do. Does that make sense? That'll help me down through the years. I got one more thing, and I may squeeze it just if we have any questions because I know we're getting close. Managing multi-site. If you're going to manage it, you'll use a matrix management. And I'll just explain this just real briefly. Can we go to the matrix management? This is, I put a link to the Asana.com. They've got a lot of stuff on matrix management. If we were looking at this, and this was a multi-site church, see where it says team lead A? That would be campus A, campus 1. Team lead B would be campus 2, campus pastor, campus leader 2. And you go on and on down. Across at the top, you've got IT, right? Now, this is more of a business model, although as the church gets bigger, you've got these departments. You've got IT, finance, HR, marketing. Probably more accurate would be to put worship, children's, small groups, and probably cram all of these into one back of house things. Okay? Follow that? So the way that we have discovered of managing this is in a matrix model where you've got authority and you've got influence. All right? We're going to go, for instance, if we are using, well, let's go to the next, scroll up to the next one. And it talks about the different matrix structures. You've got a weak structure. In a weak matrix, the team lead has limited authority over the project. Okay, roll back to the one that we were looking at before. The team lead is the campus pastor. In a weak matrix, the authority is in the department heads. The department heads say, we do it this way, this is what you got to do, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And the team lead, they lead by authority, and across, they lead by influence. We started doing it that way, and it didn't work for us. Roll it back up again. A balance, I'm not even going to talk about that. I've never seen that work anywhere. Go to the, one more. The strong, in a strong matrix, the team leads the most authority over the project. So roll it back. So in that, your team A leader or team B leader, campus pastor, campus level, would have authority going this direction, then to the IT team or the worship team or the children's team or whatever would come through the department heads. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, figure it out. I just wanted to put it up there. I probably went too far with it, but yeah, multi-site's complicated. Leading it's complicated. If you have 2 campuses, you can lead it any way you want. 3 campuses, just keep leading it the way you're doing it. Don't spend a lot of time on it. 4 campuses, you got to change the whole structure or it will destroy your team. Okay? All right.